There's nothing like owning your data outright, right? There's nothing like saying, I own my data. I can communicate directly with the software provider. I can add people if I need to. I can remove people if I need to. I can change my billing information if I need to, right? There's nothing like owning your data. So please make sure that you, as the business owner, are the administrator on all of your software subscriptions, okay? Not an employee, not a bookkeeper, not an outsourced vendor. You, the business owner, personally need to be the administrator on all the accounts. Hey, Profit First entrepreneurs, it's me, Suzanne. I'm so glad to be with you guys today. Today, we do have a very critical topic, okay? And it's extremely important. And I'll be honest with you, it's a topic that a lot of entrepreneurs miss. And, what happens is they end up falling prey to this because, it's not something that's really taught available in school. It's just something that you've just kind of learned, especially if you've got any type of forensic background, if you work for a large company in their IT department, it's just something that you learn. But it's also something that if you do not get control over this area, you can quickly become a victim in this area, and it can result in a lot of hardship, a lot of financial losses. And today I want to talk to you about this so that you can prepare yourself, so that you can do an inventory of your systems and make sure that you really have control over this. And the area that I want to talk about today is who owns your data? Yeah. I mean, who really owns your data? Do you own your data? Do the software companies own your data? Does one of your employees own your data? Does one of your vendors own your data? Who actually owns your data? And this is an important question because you need to know, right? Who has that control, who owns that data, who's able to provide that. And it should be you. You should be the one that owns the data, because reality is, you as a business owner, you spend a lot of money accumulating your data, whether that's paying your bookkeeper or your accountant to keep your books up together. You're paying for QuickBooks, you're paying for Xero, you're paying for some type of other accounting software. And you may be spending money on a hosting service, right? A cloud-based server where you're also housing data, right? Some of you guys may have software as a service or SaaS-based services. You may have your CRM, right? That's in a software-based service. And you're probably paying a monthly fee to maintain those. And I'm willing to bet for a lot of you guys, after payroll, after paying your payroll, after paying your rent, I bet for a lot of you guys, software as a service, those subscription costs are probably some of your most expensive costs on your profit and loss statement every single month. And so you're obviously know that data is important, right? Whether you're using it for analytics, you're using it to reach out to prospects, you know that that data is important and you're willing to invest in that data. But the question is, who really owns that data at the end of the day, right? Do you own it? Does a vendor own it? Does your employee actually own it? Who actually owns your data at the end of the day? And the reality is, the software provider that you're using, right? They could close their door out of nowhere, right? No advance warning, no heads up, right? Nothing really. They can literally close their door. And if your software vendor closed their door tomorrow, right? Would you be able to access that data, right? Would you be able to access that data? Would you be able to get back up and running within a few hours? Or would you be experiencing a significant loss in your operations, right? Would you be having to rebuild that data? Would you be really kind of at a loss, looking at each other like, what do I do now that my vendor has closed? And so that question of who really owns your data is an extremely important question that all of you guys should be asking yourselves today, tomorrow, and continuing on. All of you guys should be asking, who really owns this data? Because the reality is, this can happen to you, right? This can happen to you. Your SaaS provider, as lovely as they are at internet marketing, right? They may not be as savvy as you think they are, right? They may not be implementing Profit First, right? And as a result, if they would undergo a financial storm, they could lose their operations tomorrow. And guess what? SaaS is unregulated, right? It's not a licensed profession to be a SaaS provider, right? It is a very unregulated industry. And that means that you don't have that protection that if that company went away tomorrow, if they refuse to give you your data, they don't have an obligation to give it back to you, right? They don't have an obligation to give it back to you if they would declare bankruptcy, if they would close operations. They don't have that. Now, you can absolutely sue, right? You could absolutely sue this provider, but it could be months or years before you gain access. And what good is that data when it's months old or years old at that point, right? And so now it's really important for you to go, okay, who actually owns my data, right? And what can I do as a business owner to protect myself, right? Those are the questions that you guys need to be asking yourself is how do I protect myself as a business owner from data loss, right? And who actually owns my data? So I'm going to give you guys some tidbits today, and I'm going to give you guys some really know-hows and to-dos to really make sure that you own your data, that you're protecting your data, that in the event that something would happen, that you'll be able to access that data. So very important conversation that we're having today. So first of all, it starts with, taking inventory of what subscriptions do I have, right? What data is being housed in that database, right? And who actually owns it, right? Who actually owns that, right? Now, I know this feels like an obvious question, right? Like, of course I own my data, but do you really, right? And I'll tell you this how I know this, right? As a CPA, there are many times that we've onboarded a new client. And one of the first things that we ask us is, hey, or ask the client is, hey, can you give me external accountant access to your QuickBooks file, right? Can you just give me external accountant access so I can help you be a better company, help you analyze your data, help you really organize your finances, right? And so the first thing I ask for is, hey, just add me as an external accountant user. And first of all, they ask me, how do I do that? And I walk them through how to do that. And then they go, okay, it looks like I don't have the ability to do that, right? The business owner literally is telling me now they don't have the ability to do that. And I'm thinking, okay, why can't you, right? You're the business owner. Why can't you do it? And after doing some details, looking through their file, looking through their access points, what we usually find is that the subscription does not belong to them. Literally, the subscription does not belong to them. It belongs to some bookkeeper or belongs to some previous account that they may have had years ago. But at the end of the day, they are not the administrator on the account. Literally, maybe what happened was their bookkeeper, when they started their QuickBooks file, said, I'll go ahead and start this for you and I'll just build it into your subscription, or I'll charge you every month for it. Or, hey, I'll just take your credit card and they'll bill you directly for it. But the bookkeeper is the one that set up this file. And now that this business owner has cut ties with their bookkeeper, right? They're now at the mercy of this bookkeeper to grant them administrator access to the file, and a file that the business owner has actually been paying for all this time, right? They're not the administrator on the account. And so they don't own this data, right? And guess what, my friends? Bookkeepers operate also in an unregulated industry, meaning that there's no license required to become a bookkeeper. There's no state regulations. There's no regulatory component. And so what happens is these business owners are now at the mercy of their bookkeeper. And this bookkeeper who's just been fired, they're human, right? They're human. They've got hurt feelings. They just can't believe that after all these years of loyalty, you cut them, right? And sometimes these bookkeepers are just reacting in their human nature, right? And now hopefully in this case, they'll get in touch with their humanity and they'll do the right thing, right? But it's not guaranteed. It's absolutely not guaranteed. Now you can contact Intuit, you can go through their protocol to prove that you're the owner, but good luck with that, right? Good luck with proving to Intuit that you're the owner of this file when you're not the administrator on the account, right? And it looks like you haven't even been paying for it all these years, right? Good luck with that. Now, by the way, if you are using a CPA firms are required to be licensed in their states. And most states, they require their CPAs to not hold their clients' files hostage. And that means being able to turn over those QuickBook files in the event that the client asks for that. So you do get that extra protection with using a CPA firm because it is a regulated industry. But if you're a bookkeeper, is the administrator on your account, it is an unregulated industry, right? And there's nothing like owning your data outright, right? There's nothing like saying, I own my data. I can communicate directly with the software provider. I can add people if I need to. I can remove people if I need to. I can change my billing information if I need to, right? There's nothing like owning your data. So please make sure that you, as the business owner, are the administrator on all of your software subscriptions, okay? Not an employee, not a bookkeeper, not an outsourced vendor. You, the business owner, personally need to be the administrator on all the accounts, okay? So it needs to be under your email address or an email address that you control. You need to be the administrator on the account, okay? Because reality is things happen, right? Bookkeepers die, CPAs die, hurricanes happen, right? And you want to lower that risk of data loss, right? You want to be able to make sure that you're in control of your operations. And so you want to make sure that you are the administrator on your software subscriptions. Now, the next thing is, now that you're the administrator on that, I'm high fiving you for you guys that are administrator on all your softwares. The next thing that you want to do is make sure that you are getting regular backups of your data, okay? Regular backups. And not only are you getting backups, right, but these backups are happening at regular intervals, right? Whether it's daily, whether it's weekly, whether it's monthly or annual, these backups are not just like, oh, I remember to do one. They are regular scheduled intervals where you're doing that. And you can even get certain software programs that will back up your data for you. But this is very important that you are getting that. And you want to be doing on a consistent basis. Okay. So again, not whenever you remember to do it, you want to be doing it. So for example, if you're using QuickBooks, right, you want to make sure that you're downloading those reports, right? And you want to download those reports, especially at points where you have key compliance or reporting areas. So like if you're running a tax return, you want to have the support that matches those tax returns. For example, you want to make sure you're downloading those payroll registers that correspond to your quarterly payroll tax returns or your annual payroll tax returns. And by the way, you should also be downloading those tax returns. If you're using QuickBooks to do your payroll tax returns, you need to be downloading those quarterly or annually, right? And now I know many of you guys are thinking, but the data is always available, right? I always have access to my data. I can get it whenever I need it, right? But again, what guarantee do you have, right, that your provider will be around when you need it, right? How do you know that that provider is going to be there? And hence that conversation that I started earlier, right? Life happens, businesses closes, sometimes expectedly, sometimes unexpectedly. Sometimes you find out when there's a Wall Street Journal newsletter, right? That or news posting, right? That your company is closing, right? Or you may end up switching providers, right? And you don't want to have to be filing or downloading years of data, right? So you want to make sure that you're in a regular cadence of downloading reports, downloading tax returns, and the reports that match those tax returns at regular cadences, right? You also want to be downloading your monthly and annual financial statements also, because again, you want to have backups of that data in the case that you ever need it. Now, if you guys are using a client management database or CRM, right, you want to make sure that you're also downloading those customer and prospect lists regularly too, right? And you want to be doing this at least monthly. If you can do it weekly, that's even better, but at least monthly. And again, the reason that you want to do this is because you want to own your data, right? You never want to be in a place where you lose your data and you're not able to continue within a few hours, right? That's not where you want to be. You want to own your data in a way that if you need to upload something immediately to a new provider, you're able to do that. You want to be able to own your data, right? And, many of you folks may be using a hosting service to maintain your business data. You could be using one of the Microsoft Office platforms like SharePoint, right? It could be a hosted server. But again, the question that should always be in your mind is what happens if this server goes down? What happens if this server goes down? What happens if I cannot access my data, right? What happens if that server goes down? What happens to my data? What happens if my data disappears? Can I restore that data to a new server? And can I be able to function as normal within, a few hours is really the goal that you want to be in. And again, downloading this data and backing up this data is critical for that. And not just downloading and backing up data, right? But doing it regular intervals, right? We talked about daily is best. The next best is weekly. monthly. We definitely want to be in a regular cadence of doing that. And then the question is, where are you downloading this data to, right? Are you downloading it to an external computer? Yes, you want to download it to an external computer, but you also want to download it to an external data storage drive. And I recommend having like at least two data storage drives where you can literally switch that backup. So you always have a backup of the backup, right? So at least two external storage drives. So if you're using like those external hard drives, at least two of them so that you could alternate the backups on so that you have that. And again, you're doing that because you want to own your data. You don't want to find yourself a victim to life just happen, right? So you want to create a backup system to ensure that your data is always retained by your organization, that it's owned by your organization. We talked about earlier, a good place to start is taking inventory of all the systems that you have, right? And the systems that you're using. And you can do this in an Excel spreadsheet. You can do this on paper, right? And what you're doing is you're literally listing all of the systems that your organization uses. And you're noting on this spreadsheet, what data is being stored in this spreadsheet, right? And this by this software. Is it client data? Is it my financial data? What is being stored by this system? And the next column you're going to have is, you're going to say, okay, what is the regular cadence of this backup? Is this a weekly backup, a daily backup, a monthly backup, right? What is the cadence of this backup? And then the next column is who's responsible for backing it up. It's great that you sat down and figured out who the systems are and what data it is, but who is doing the who, right? Who is doing the backup, right? And you want to make sure that you assign a person to that. You want to have a name in that column of who is doing that. And that person that's doing the backup, right? They're also going to be responsible for giving you feedback that they have done that backup, trust but verify, right? Trust but verify, make sure the work actually got done, right? Go back and just occasionally look to make sure that those backups are really happening. And then test the backup, right? It's great that you're doing backup, but how do you know that backup is actually a good backup? How do you know that it works, right? And that person that's responsible for doing the backup should also be opening the files and making sure that, okay, these files actually work. I can actually open these spreadsheets. I can actually see the data that's there. These backups are actually working. We want to make sure that we're testing those backup. And we're doing that as part of the backup process, right? For that, because who wants a backup that doesn't work, right? You're going through the trouble of backing it up every day. But again, who wants a backup that isn't working? What good is it for you to have two external drives where you can't pull any data from it? So you definitely want to make sure that you are testing those backups and making sure that they're working for you. So again, making sure you own the data, making sure you're the administrator on the accounts is extremely important, right? It should be you personally, the business owner, your name, your email address, right? A phone number that if you're doing multi-factor authentication that you can access and control, not your employee's cell phone, not your vendor's cell phone. It needs to be a phone that you control, right? Associated with that. We need to take inventory of our systems. We talked about needing to take inventory of our systems and performing regular backups and testing those backups are all things that are going to be important to you. So I hope that today was extremely helpful for you. And until next time, may the profits be with you.